Hey Liverpool fans, have you seen the latest release? At AnfieldIndex, we've teamed up with LiverpoolFC to announce that the brand new 24-25 LFC Nike home kit and anthem jacket are out now, and they're hotter than ever. The brand new kit pays homage to the legendary Rome 1984 side, featuring sleek pinstripe detailing that brings a touch of history to our modern game. Whether you're cheering from the Kop or watching from home, you'll feel the spirit of the Reds coursing through every stitch. The best part? You can grab yours today. The new kit and training range are available in official stores, online, and through the LFC store app. Don't wait, order now and be ready to show your Liverpool pride in style. Get your hands on the new 24-25 LFC home kit and anthem jacket today. Let's make this season unforgettable. You'll never walk alone.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hey, Alan here from the Mindfield podcast. Just before we delve into today's episode, just want to remind people that we have a cut-off after 30 minutes. So if you want to listen to the full episode, please sign up to Anfield Index Pro and you'll be able to access all the fantastic content that we have across the board, especially now as we're coming into the end of the season and a new beginning, starting off with the club. All right, let's hand you into the episode.
Hello and welcome to the Mindfield podcast from Anfield Index Pro, your sports psychology podcast where we take all things Liverpool and the mind and try and put some sort of shape on it in a semi-sensical kind of way. My name is Alan O'Donoghue, and as always, I am joined by the doctor himself, Dr. Andrew Vincent. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well. If we were allowed to have introductory music to our podcast, the intro music today would have had to be "School's Out for the Summer" by Kiss, because that's the mode Jurgen's been in. Is school's out, winding it down, just kind of knocking his way through here. It's been something. And
we're going to get into this. And if the listeners could see Andrew right now, Andrew's also on vacation and he's looking very casual. Very, very
casual. So if I sound casual, it's because I am.
He's
school's out for the summer for me too. As Jurgen said, who gives a shit?
As he sups a beer, or maybe not a beer, because it is very early over there. So
it is.
We will have a retrospective podcast or two on Jurgen's time at Liverpool during the summer. We may even get some guests on to join us to have that conversation. But today we want to talk about the fact that school is out for Jurgen, which it looks like, for the past few weeks. And whether or not that is doing Jurgen a disservice, the fans a disservice, the players a disservice. But when a coach walks into a press conference and goes, "I'm late, who gives a shit?" I can understand how it might be challenging for players to go out onto a pitch and give it their all when the coach is very clearly checked out, done and dusted. And Andrew might argue with me on this one, but maybe phoning it in, even down to the fact that was it yesterday or the day before, we're seeing photographs of Pep Lijnders, being unofficially announced as the RB Salzburg coach before the season is finished. They don't give a shit anymore, do they? Not they don't give a shit about Liverpool and they don't give a shit about the fans and they don't give a shit about the players, but they don't give a shit about the results anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think I think it does and it doesn't. I think it matters exactly as much as it matters, which is that there's nothing that these games can get us. Like the odds of us, it got to the point where the odds of us pushing up to second were basically zero. The odds of us dropping down to fourth were basically zero. I think if there was something legitimately to play for at this point, there might be a little bit more seriousness or a little bit more push. I think phoning it in is strong, but I think it's like you had someone. It's like, I don't know if this was a thing when you had gym class growing up. Did you have to do the flexed arm hang? That was something we did over here. It was like they would time you and see how long you could like keep your chin over a bar.
No, never did.
I don't know if that's considered a life skill in Ireland the way it is here, but anyway. So it's like you've got someone who's like when you're doing something like that, and it's like you can hold on, and then when you let go, you really let go, right? Like that was all you had, and I kind of think that's how this season's been for Jurgen. Is like he was pushing, he was scraping the bottom to really get everything that was left. And I think in some ways, probably a little bit of a relief to be able to just let go and have these games where there's not a lot to play for. I think if you asked him, he would never say he was phoning it in. I think, of course, he would say like the level of seriousness is different when you're not playing for anything in particular, that, it changes the intensity of things. But I think it's hard for that subconscious relief to not come out, and just the way he's approaching things. And that's been so clear, is that he's preparing for what's next, which is nothing. A holiday. And I think he's really looking forward to it. And so, in terms of how it's going to affect the players and how it's going to affect things, like I haven't thought about it a ton yet, so we can think about it together on the podcast here. But yeah, like I don't think he would say he's phoning it in, but I think there's just so much relief in not having to deal with the stress and the pressure and the push. And I think he's leaning into that.
Which he's fully entitled to do, because there is no benefit to him no matter what. And there's also no real benefit or downside to the players as such. Like, yes, obviously they're going to be aware that Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes are watching there on their little computers, watching the numbers coming in for all the different attributes and all that kind of stuff. But we're probably looking at a clean slate for everybody in some senses, or maybe some of those players have been told already, look, you got to go find a new club. But I think the players are probably so used to having a coach who is in charge, essentially, that they're probably just waiting for the new coach to come in and take charge. So it's like the teacher who's, literally, okay, I'm leaving early, guys. There's a sub teacher coming in. So the kids are going to start playing around until the sub teacher comes in, and then they'll just get a read on the sub teacher, and then they might keep playing around, or they might just go, oh, fuck this, good luck, I'm going home. So
I think,
yeah,
I think the one caveat I would add to that is that all of them are going to be aware that there's someone coming in, and that person's probably watching these games. And so that's definitely, like, in my experience, working with players who are either going through a coaching change or in a situation where, obviously in the United States, we've got kind of like farm teams where it's like there's the main team, then the team below them. And so it's like if there's a time where they know, oh, these other coaches are going to be there, or these scouts are going to be there, players are very aware if there's someone important watching them. And it's like, they deal with that in different ways. But I think the Liverpool players right now are going to be very aware that in some ways they're being evaluated. I think for some players, for the Mo Salahs, for the Van Dijks, for the Alexander Arnolds, maybe for the Allisons of the world, like they're not super worried about it. I think for some of the other players who are maybe Darwin Núñez, maybe Luis Diaz, maybe some of these other players who are going to have that in mind, especially the younger ones who have a lot to prove in their career. Either one, they want to make sure they're making a good impression, but they probably also want another step in their development. Maybe they want to show that I'm someone who can be built around. I'm someone who can be used in this way. I think there will be an element of that. Is that enough for this team that's played a lot of games this season, has been run into the ground at different times? Is that enough to get them firing on all cylinders? No, but maybe 3/4 of them.
Does that shift the culture? Because we talk about culture being almost like a static process, but it's absolutely not. Cultures shift, they maneuver, they are influenced by different elements that come into play at different times. Could the pressure being off Jurgen, and the players are going to know that, whether he verbalizes that, or I can't imagine he's going into training going, lads, we're just going to have a little kickabout today. Or Linders, I can't imagine that's what he's doing either. They're setting the team up to win as best as possible. So they're not going out going...
Linders is over in Austria.
But, the team is the management team they're not making the decision to not try, but
no.
The players will definitely pick up on it. And then the players will have their own belief systems. And maybe if we take the Villa match, it was so... I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but there was no connections. There was no joined up, consistent, structural play, or didn't appear to be. It was it was like the schoolyard where there's the 2 or 3 really good players who can decide whether or not they're bothered to play or not. And then you got the others who want to prove a point, but because the other players, the bigger players, are not doing the job to the level that they can do, it can cause the structure to become destabilized a bit. And we looked absolutely terrible. Absolutely.
We've looked bad this year. We've looked really bad. When we've looked good, we've looked good. But when we've looked bad, it has been hard to watch.
Yeah. And I think we've looked bad even before we were out of the running for the title.
Yeah. I think part of that, we talked about it a lot, is Jurgen Klopp, a 7-year manager, right? That's the amount of time he had. And it was interesting. I was listening to maybe AI Scouted before the Villa game. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I was listening to Postmaster Raw for the Villa game. And Dave was asking, would we have been any worse off if Klopp left 2 years ago? And I think, who knows, because who would we have gotten instead and what would that have looked like? But, I don't think in that 2 years he's had us at anything like the best he had us at. I think this team was trying to scrape the last of something, and got really close. And I know there's going to be plenty of people who are so tired of hearing this team got really close. And fair enough, it's worth something to get really close. But it's not really what we're here for. Mm-hmm. And so I think you asked about the culture of the group, and I think, I don't know, it just doesn't matter that much. That's okay. I don't know, it's interesting working with players towards the end of the season and players in different positions. And, depending on where they're at, there's a lot of different spots you can be in. So, I've worked with players. With hockey, you're typically ending in playoffs. So it's the season is always kind of ending with an elimination tournament, unless you've had such a bad year that that's not the case. And I've worked with the handful of players in that spot. But most of the times, with the players I've been working with, or the team I've been working with, typically they tend to be in some sort of elimination playoff thing. You're going to have players who haven't really seen the field very much during the season, and they're not really going to. Like, this isn't the moment where they're going to suddenly get there. And like, they know, right? And when you've been in that role all season, it's really hard to keep getting up for practices if you're not getting a chance. Hasn't happened with a ton of our guys this season because we've had injuries at different times and stuff like that. Like, there's no one who just like has hung out on the bench and barely played. But like, for those players, there's always a time where they're just like, cool, there's 2 weeks left. You know, oh, it'd be nice if we won this next one, but if we didn't, like, what would my life be like not having practice in 3 weeks? And that's always going to be a little bit there, I think. And, you know, you're going to have some players too who, you know, maybe they're fighting really hard to prove something. So like a Stefan Basic, some of the younger players, they're going to show up to training and they're still going to be pushing really hard because really the people who they're trying to prove themselves to are the older players, right? Like, they're trying to show the group that they belong in and around the squad. And so they're still going to be really motivated to go. You're going to have some people who are sort of in a spot where they're like, just out of professionalism, they really want to still bring it. And they're going to really kind of try to pump themselves up to bring it. And like, that's tough. Maybe some of them will get to a point too, or if everyone around them is like 50-50, then they'll end up being 50-50 too. You know, some people who maybe are playing for a move or no, you know, like, there's all sorts of different spots people can be, but it is a really interesting time because it's like you spend all season gearing up and focusing and what's next. And you kind of get to the last 2 weeks or the last week or so. And it's either, from a mental perspective, keep with what you've got because it's working. Probably we've dialed it in. We're not going to start something new from a mental perspective with a couple weeks left or in the middle of the playoffs where you're supposed to be all performance. If the season's kind of tapered, probably from a mental perspective, we're not going to start something new right then. Like, we'll revisit in the summer and kind of talk about goals, but like, people often just don't have much in the tank. So it's a matter of, you know, often it's a matter of just like, just do your thing, stay sharp, kind of, and like, it's okay. You know, don't worry about it too much. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to figure something new out if there's nothing to play for. I think that's okay.
Do you?
I do.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
What I find interesting is that this is probably the first year or season under Klopp's tenure that we haven't had something to play for going into the last few matches, because we have either been going for the league right up to the end, we have had a cup final to prepare for, we've been fighting for Europe or fighting for Champions League. So there's always been something. We've never been the Fulham. We've never been the West Ham. We've never been the Brighton under Jurgen Klopp, where it's like there literally is nothing. Like, the players aren't even playing to get into the cup final team. There is nothing to play for. And it feels shit as a fan. It feels absolutely like it's... I was sitting watching that Fulham match, kind of getting pissed off, but kind of not. kind of just like, ugh, come on, let's just pull the plug and get it over with. And people are kind of commenting and saying, the players have let Klopp down coming into the end, and I don't think that's true. I don't think there's any one reason why we've had what we've had. It's just been a combination of a number of different elements. I think tactically this season, we've left ourselves exposed, and we've just been really good at attack most of the season to win matches. I think, playing big players in the early rounds of the little cups had a massive negative impact. I think not having sufficient level of quality, and that's no disrespect to the players that are there in certain positions or as backup positions, has had an impact as well, because we've had so many injuries. And then Jurgen announcing his leaving. Like, there are so many different elements that have played into the fact that this season is petering out, and we can all point to one of those, but it's probably a combination of them all. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is a combination of them all. And I also, a few things. Like, first one, I was like half tuned into the Villa game. Like, one, because my son wanted to play Minecraft with me, so I can like kind of half watch while I'm playing Minecraft. But also, like, normally I might just turn on the game and say, hey, let's play after. But, I just think, like, behind the curtain. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting about working with athletes and working with people sort of in these like professional roles, where it's like you get to kind of get a sense of what's really going on for them on the other side. And as fans, it's like we're thinking like, God, that would be the best place to be. Like, if I were there, I would be 100% all the time. It wouldn't matter. I would just be so pumped to give it my all. But that's so different. I mean, they've been doing this since July, and like, that's when they report for preseason usually, right? Late June, early July. They've been doing it for 11 months. It's really hard to keep that level of intensity. And not that it's really hard to keep that level of intensity when there's nothing to play for at this point, And so I just, yeah, it's disappointing as a fan. And like, I'll certainly watch this weekend and watch this last game. I'm trying to think, what was the game before Villa? I don't even think I watched that. Oh, it was Spurs. I don't remember if I watched it or if I wasn't able to watch it. But like, when the game stopped being important, I kind of tuned out, to be honest with you. And like, maybe that's why I'm not as frustrated about it. Yeah. Like, it certainly could be. But I think there was also a thing to me there of like, hey, the season's over. We've got games left, but the season's over. And it's like, you can say all you want, like, oh, you got to do it for this or do it for this or something to play for. And it's like, yeah, you're going to go out and give it some sort of effort. But like, you can't lie to yourself. And we've talked about this before. Like, from the mental side of things, people try to trick themselves sometimes and try to trick themselves into thinking, oh, like, I just got to do this or I just got to do this to like push motivation. That can get you maybe a little bit of mileage. But at the end of the day, like, when you're lying to yourself, you're lying to yourself. Like, there's some part of you that knows. And when you've been working so hard, you're so fatigued, like, and we've talked about the mental and physical fatigue. And it's like, when you're that tired and you're trying to lie to yourself, it's just, you either find something real, which there's just not much left to motivate yourself with that's real here, or like, you don't. And then it just kind of looks like this. And I think that's what we're looking at. Also, it's just time for a change.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm going to ask you and the listeners, Andrew, to indulge me for a second. So my latest motivation interview podcast has just come out this week, and it's an interview with a guy called Paul D'Amour, who is a bass player. He was a bass player in a band called Tool back in the 90s, who were really big. And he's also the current Ministry bass player. And what Paul, there's context for this, it's not just a plug, but what Paul did was, when Tool were recording their third album, after having a massive smash hit, they were one of the biggest bands in the world at the time, he walked away. And to the outside world, all the fans were like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're walking away from one of the biggest bands in the world as you're recording an album that could push you stratospheric. And even his family and friends were saying the same thing. They were like, whoa, why are you walking away from the golden goose? But he said the process of making that third album was so excruciating. Now, Tool would be renowned for, the minutiae and going over like a chord 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 times. And he's like, I just want to play music. I don't want to play the same chord 100 times and then go and come back and play it 100 more times. He said that whole process was awful, and he knew he needed to get out, and he knew what he was leaving. So I think the reason I'm saying this is because that's very much similar to what you're saying to the rest of the world. Those of us who would love to be in that position to, let me be a bass player in one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Let me be the, right full back for Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Like, I will run through a brick wall. But when you're in it, it's not all roses. And forget the money, because whether you're in a big rock band or playing for Liverpool Football Club, you have enough money. Money doesn't become the motivator. You don't work harder by getting an extra pound, euro, dollar. You just don't, unless you're leaving and going somewhere else. But that's usually not the money that's motivating you anyway. It's the desire to prove yourself in a new place. So I think,
plus your contract's probably already sorted. So it's like, if you're on a 4-year contract, you're not going to make more money by playing better this year necessarily. So like, if you're in the last year of your contract, sometimes we see people have a really good year, and that's not a surprise. But like, the money itself, like, it's kind of in the background a little bit at that point, right? Like, everything's covered. You're fine. Like, you're used to it. It's like the temperature of water is like, maybe at first, like, you get in, it's especially cold or especially warm, but at some point you acclimatize and it's just the water you're in. And, anyway, I didn't mean to cut across you there.
But you're right. And I think that's something for maybe in the context of what we're talking about in terms of the players. What could motivate them? Like, honestly, like, even if, someone like Harvey Elliott or Jarrell Kwanzaa or Ryan Gravenberch coming into the team and they're going, right, today I'm giving it 100%. I'm running through a brick wall. And you start running through a brick wall and the players around you aren't. And you could be fatigued, you could be tired, or you may not have enough adrenaline in your system to keep going for 90 minutes. You're like, well, fuck this. Why should I try? And I think we saw that.
And I think there's also something different between, the way we talk about it as fans is so black and white. You're either trying or you're not. Mm-hmm. Right. But there's so many different gradients of that between totally phoning it in and walking around and Champions League final levels of intensity. I don't care who you are. You can't fabricate Champions League final levels of intensity if it's not a Champions League final intense game, important game. If the team around you, like, you can't fabricate that. Like, that has to be an interaction between person and context, and the context has to pull that from you. Like, you can do part of it, maybe like a 95%, maybe like a 90%. But I think for a lot of these players, like, they're at a level professionally where they can show up and put in a good effort, like a decent effort. That's not, it's them working, but it's not them absolutely flying. And that's probably where a lot of them are. Of course, it looks different than when you're pushing for something, but we're not pushing for anything. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. Like, I've had this conversation with 3 or 4 or 5 players, maybe over the years, maybe not quite that many, but like, it does go against something that they know internally. like they feel like they're always supposed to be pushing. And the conversation I've had a few times is like, it's okay to show up and do okay. For a few weeks here, like, what do you have to prove? And I think, I try to be careful with that with them because, I don't want to set them up mentally to phone it in and cost themselves for next year, cost themselves for the future, or certainly not to like, I'm not telling anyone to go and totally phone it in during practice. But often I'll have that question is, what's left for you here? What else do you want from this season? What are the odds of you're actually getting that? And at some level, what do you need? And so I had a player just had probably one of the best seasons of her career. Her team context, very frustrating. Like it just, it's okay to like focus on yourself a little bit, focus on your life away from the game, show up and do what you need to do in practice. But it's okay to not do all of the extras. And that's the other thing too, is this is probably kind of a frustrating and weird season for the players. Like they also, the way a lot of us are frustrated about the last 2 months, all of them are just as frustrated too. And they're feeling probably the frustration of this limbo. Some of them might be frustrated that like the dynamic around the training ground is maybe really casual, maybe more casual than they would like. Some of them are just preparing for the Euros, like for the Copa. Like it's, I don't know, like it's, they've been through this too. And I think when you're that frustrated, sometimes it's also important to just give yourself that space to step away mentally and just like move on. There's not a lot left here. And in some ways, like, it's not so different. It's not so different from, like if your team at work finished a project and it's like, you still got to go to work, but you're not going to start a new project for 2 weeks. Like, what are you going to be doing?
Yeah.
Maybe you organize your desk for a couple of days, maybe, right? Like maybe you spend some time doing whatever, but then at some point you're just going to kind of, and that might sort of be okay. And so as fans, I think we have it in our head that it's never okay to be playing at 90%. And I just think like sometimes it a little bit is, and you don't show up at the game and walk around, but also you don't have to pretend it's the Champions League final all the time. You can't pretend it's the Champions League final all the time. This is going to sound kind of contentious, I think. I don't think it's going to be something people like very much, but it's a conversation I've had a few times. Like, it's okay. And you know what happens? I almost always get a text in the middle of the following week where this person's like, yeah, you were right. This is better. And I can enjoy training and I can go play. And like, I'm going to put in a good effort in this last game, but also like to just acknowledge to myself that this doesn't matter the way the first week of preseason is going to matter is a tremendous relief.
And the other thing to remember is that if we're playing with high stress, it's a lot more difficult for us to process things that are going on, especially for those younger players as well, who maybe don't have that automaticity built in around the structures and their role in that structure. So, when we shut down that logical part of our brains, not intentionally, it just happens because of stress, we're less effective, or we can be less effective. So now, I do wish you turned around to Trent and said, don't just jog around the pitch on Monday, because that would have been great if you didn't just jog around the pitch on Monday. That would have been fantastic. But yeah, we're not going to pick on anybody in particular.
Too late. We've picked on Pep Blinders, we've picked on Trent, we've picked on Jurgen a little bit.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear what you think will happen on Sunday. Do you suspect that there is now something to play for on Sunday, given that it's Jurgen's last match?
I think once upon a time that would have felt really different. Like right around January. I don't think that's going to suddenly motivate everyone to run through a brick wall. I really don't. We've known about it for a long time now, 4 or 5, 6 months, whatever it's been. I think we'll probably win because Wolves have been on the beach too. You know, we only recently set up our blanket and chairs and umbrella next to them, but like they've been there for a bit longer than us. So I think we'll win. I think it'll be a really great atmosphere because I think the fans will really want to give Jurgen a good send-off. And I think that's great. Like, I think that's really what we want. Like, I hope the team can play in a way that's fun and has enough intensity to it that it's, you know, like enjoyable. I don't think giving the boss a win on the way out is a Champions League final level of motivation. I don't. And I think especially because of how Jurgen has been over the past few weeks, it's kind of like it's not like he's pushing to the very end. It's not like, hey, let's sap every last moment out of this season and keep going with the intensity. That's just clearly not how he's been. So I think that translates to the players too. And I don't think he's the kind of person, like, I think he wants a nice moment with the fans. I don't think he's someone who's like, I need a win on the way out. Like, I don't think he cares that much about that.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
Sports Social Podcast Network.